My name's Owen. I'm Owen Egerton. Let's close the door and we'll get to know each other.
And I have a short biography that I can read you about Owen Egerton.
Yeah.
Owen Egerton is a writer and performer and has written for Warner Brothers, Fox, and Disney Studios. His script, Bobby Sue, co-written by Chris Mass and Russell Sharman, won a spot on the Blacklist. Egerton is also the author of several novels, including The Book of Harold, The Illegitimate Son of God, which was optioned by Warner Brothers Television, and this fall he's directing his debut film, Follow. So,
thank you very much.
Without further ado,
yeah, thank you. That bio is a little old. I finished Follow. It came out and premiered at Fantastic Fest, and is right now getting distribution. And then some other exciting things. I just last night landed on something that's called the Young and Hungry list, which is like the top hungry writers with buzz in LA, which was nice. And I just sold this. I can't say the who yet, but I just sold my next script with me directing. So I'm having a very good week. So yeah, it's been a really good week, which is good because there's been a lot of not good weeks, as you guys know, in film and in the creative arts. So yeah, I'm excited. Pitching is something I love to talk about because I pitch a lot, and it's funny because they're both baseball terms, but I pitch and strike out, which I know doesn't make sense in baseball, but I often pitch, but I often do. So there's all kinds of different pitching we're going to be talking about, and pitching is one of those things. I mean, it's interesting. I talk about story structure a lot. I love talking about screenplay structure. It's something I'm kind of nerdy about, and about writing overall. Pitching is its own separate art, and it's so cool that you guys are taking a bit of time to think about it, because it is an essential part to not just screenwriting, but to script writing. But if you're in the business of screenwriting, pitching is something you do almost as much as typing. I mean, not quite, but it's amazing how often, sometimes too often, I have mixed feelings about pitching. Before we get started though, it would help me if I got to know you guys a little bit, if that's okay. So, how about if we just go around the room, just tell me your first name, or tell me your full name, so we can call this, what's it called when you meet people in the business and you're networking? Well, networking is what we're doing. So tell me your full name, and tell me what, I'm presuming are we all writers? Are we all writers and screenwriters?
Yeah.
No?
No.
No, so we're not. What we're doing in film. Tell me what you're doing in a film and what you hope to be doing in film. What you're doing in film, what you hope to be doing in film. We'll start with you.
Okay, I'm Mark Ferris. I'm from San Antonio, Texas. I've been writing a feature-length screenplay. I would like to be behind the camera in whatever capacity I can. DP, AD. I did just actually AD a film that premiered at AFF.
Oh, great! Congratulations. What's your
Short
film?
Promise Me.
Oh, great.
Part of the short package 10. So,
Yeah.
I'd like to be on set.
Great, Mark. And you're working on your first feature screenplay.
Oh yeah.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
Next.
Oh, I was going to go back.
Okay,
I'm going to go like,
Go.
yeah.
My name's Rick Ariada. I'm a first year film student at the Art Institute of Boston. Just trying to get my foot in the door. I have one story that I've been on and off working. So I'm just trying to get a better idea how to put it through.
Excellent. Nice to meet you, Rick.
Jim Troy, my wife's near friend, so published author. She has 5 books, and I was hoping to help her out. She wasn't available, but you can glance at her books on Amazon. The first 3, you can read the first 4 chapters free.
Yeah.
And then I have a famous uncle that's a famous aviator, and I personally did the book on him. I kind of published it, and it's called Commander in the Sky, but you can look at that for free. Just search up Henry Hank Phillips.
Henry Hank Phillips.
And it's almost as interesting as the movie Unbroken. It's on that theme.
Yeah, all right. Fantastic. Thanks, Jim.
I'm Mark Clark. I just finished writing my first screenplay this year, and I've been sitting watching it for several months, trying to figure out what to do with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I know that feeling. All right. Thanks, Mark. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Colleen Randazzo.
Colleen,
And I'm a wannabe screenwriter.
do you write screenplays?
I've written a book that I think would make an awesome movie.
You want to make, I know that feeling. Yeah, they go back and forth.
Yeah, and I've actually rewritten this book so that it's like 4 different books, but it's all the same book.
Whoa.
So just in one it's a horror flick, in one it's a love story,
Oh, yeah.
in one it's heterosexual, in one it's bisexual.
Oh.
So it's like 4 books. But I would like to try and have a movie made.
Yeah, yeah. That's great. Hi, Colleen.
I'm here for support. My husband Mark and Margaret.
Hey, Margaret.
And I don't run.
Margaret, if you have a spouse who writes, then you have all the terrors of a writer's life without the rewards. So in some ways, God bless you. Right in the back.
I'm Douglas Buchanan. I'm a screenwriter, actor, and director. I've got like 5 ideas floating around and one I'm actually writing. So
That's great. What genre mainly, Douglas?
horror.
Cool. That's what I do a lot, but horror is where my heart is.
I'm Robert McDormand. I'm part of a small film company located in Round Rock.
Cool.
We started a couple years ago, and we're kind of doing all of us kind of jack of all trades, master of none. So we'll do a little bit of acting, a little bit of cinematography, and get into screenwriting.
What's the name of the company?
Feast or Famine Films.
Feast or Famine. Cool. And sir, how about you?
Oh, yes, Gary Ganaway, I'm a writer, I've got 3 scripts. The latest is a horror comedy, I'm trying to produce it myself.
Excellent. Candace, do you get to introduce yourself, or are you just...
I can introduce myself. My name is Candace Wiggin. I write for my own comics, is what I primarily write. And so that's what I do. Not directly film, but the same sort of scripting aspects go into it.
Sure. And we got you guys who just came in.
Just came in.
Yeah.
Sorry we were late.
It's okay.
Well, I'm Carla Siegel. We have a small media production company called Paulville Pictures. I'm a writer, director, producer, wearing many hats. I've written 4 or 5 screenplays. I have a small film in the festival circuit right now.
Nice.
A small, short film. I also write a cartoon. Did you say you write a comic?
Yes.
Oh,
Right,
God.
Connections. There we go. Networking
So-
just worked.
And I'm just looking to take the next step with our own productions. or
Fantastic.
Projects.
Great.
Hey, Owen, I'm Michael Moreland. We've actually worked together before.
I was gonna say,
I
yeah.
electrocuted you in Evil
That's
Twinkie.
it. That's it.
That was the gap on
Evil Twinkie. Wow, that was great. Probably the only thing I'll ever do on 35mm.
That's right.
I'm thinking, like, I made it. Yeah.
That was PJ Revolve shooting that.
Yeah.
So I'm still cinematographer, and I'm Carl and I have our production company called Ten Pictures. So I'm looking to produce some original works as well as working with other people. So pitching is a big deal, and we want to kind of get some insight into that.
Yeah, all right, thank you. What a nice transition. That's perfect. And thank you for electrocuting me. I recently showed my kids that. I was like, listen, it's okay. I'm not really dying for a Twinkie. Okay, so let's talk about pitching. So there's all kinds of different worlds of pitching. How many of you guys have been in an experience where you're like, oh, this was a pitch experience that you're pitching, officially or non-officially? Raise your hand if you've ever been in that situation. Great, okay, so a handful of you. I actually imagine more of you have than you realize. Pitching is simply, like on the base level, pitching is, like the word, is throwing out an idea and seeing if someone catches it, seeing if it has a reaction. So it really could be even the simple thing when you're sitting down with your date, your spouse, your friend, and you go, I've got this idea about a squirrel who goes to college, and you see them and you know from their face whether they go, uh-huh. You're like, oh, you know what, now that idea is not nearly as exciting as it was. And some of those ideas, like you wake up in the middle of the night where you dream the perfect idea, like, oh, it's great, and then you turn to your spouse and you're like, this squirrel goes to college, and again, it's like, and you're like, oh no, it was just a crappy dream idea. So we have all these different ways that we pitch. But then we get to the places where we officially pitch, where we're pitching someone who we believe can help our project move ahead. And I'm presuming that's what we want to talk about here. And it's this weird science of how do you take what in a film world is at least an hour-and-a-half story, right, and narrow it down to somewhat like the elevator pitch, which is 90 seconds, 30 seconds, or to the 20-minute pitch, or to sometimes the 45-minute pitch. How do you take that story and make it really shine for the people listening? And that can be a really difficult thing. So we're going to talk about the different ways we pitch, different opportunities we pitch, and the different ways to take your story and narrow it down. And I'm going to be using, for examples, it's like, gosh, where can I find examples? And I was like, oh yeah, because I pitch all the time. I've got all these examples. And basically what I've got on my pitch documents, documents that I write primarily, actually, for me. I do show them around as well, because we do have documents that we use, and that's sort of a form of pitching. But primarily, they're the documents that I use to read out loud, or even just to sort of have beside me when I'm telling people my story idea. Let's start first, before we even get to the 90-second pitch, before we even get to the 30-second and 90-second pitch, let's talk about log lines. You guys heard about this expression, right? Yeah?
Would you explain it?
Yeah, totally. Well, does anyone have a guess? Anyone have what would you call it? Yeah.
It's like
gosh, we didn't have, you
No, that's
filmed
okay.
everything.
No,
No,
it's okay.
no, tell me your name.
Cody. I'm a last year AI film student. So if you want to talk to me after class, I'll set you up. And I'm leaning more towards a director. I have 2 features I'm working on, 3 shorts, like 12 skits. I don't know, I'm a very productive little guy.
I guess so, yeah.
So I'm here because I'm in the pitch contest because I got put in there without my goodwill.
Oh, good.
Because I didn't, it's a question I'll ask later when you open it up.
I'll be judging you later.
Oh.
So tell me, what do you think about log lines? Tell me.
Log line is a 1 or 2 sentence thing to kind of describe an entire idea for a skit or a movie that you have coming up.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's great. So actually, why don't we do this? We can't get online right now, can we, Candace?
You can get like online on the computer.
I can?
Yeah.
Will you do something for me?
Yeah.
You can do it online or just here. Will you look up Bloodlist 2015? And we'll talk about log lines. Bloodlist, 2 separate words, 2015. So log lines exactly what Cody just said. They are 1 or 2 sentences that tell you what the story is. And if you don't have that, if you're like, you know what, my story doesn't fit into a log line, then you're not ready to have a movie. It's not a movie yet. And I know that sounds harsh. Novels have the ability to kind of be expansive. Novels have the ability to be like lakes. They have a lot of stuff going on under the water, and there's lots of beautiful stuff, and we can go down, we can relax. Movies are rivers. Movies move, and we know the direction that they move. And it's an industry because it takes so much to make a movie, even a cheap movie, and so many people, that you need a solid idea. A simple, solid idea. Now, that simple idea does not mean a simple film. It does not mean that your film shouldn't be complicated, but you want something, boom, is a hook that drives it. Now, a quick thing on log lines. Log lines are not the same as taglines. What I mean is log lines are not the thing you see on a poster that says, you know, just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water, or whatever, you know, Jaws 2. Those get confused. Log lines is the simple description of the movie. Candace, did you look those up?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Thank you so much.
presumably just the website.
Yeah, that's great. So Bloodlist is a contest. Have you guys heard of the Blacklist?
Mm-hmm.
So Blacklist is like films that have yet to be produced. Maybe they're bought, maybe they're about to be made, but yet to be produced, that are the most popular of a year with executives. And I was lucky enough to actually be on that, which was really nice a few years back. The Bloodlist is a bit different. It's horror movies, and they only have 13. It's creepy. So there's top 13 unproduced horror movies. So let's see. I'm going to see if I'm going to read out some of the ones this year, because I read all the log lines because I was on there this year, and I was like, oh, what are the other people making? And these are great examples of log lines.
And are they on there to be picked up, or?
Some of them are purchased, and some of them are not. Oh, I'm not finding it. Hang on. What? Someone's led me astray. Candace led me astray. Okay, there we go. There's the list. Hang on, just slow. My internet's slow. Cool. All right. So yeah, these are going to be the 1 sentences, and yeah, for these in particular, the Bloodlist, over half were already set up with somebody. That means they've already purchased, but they haven't yet been made. All right. Okay, so here's number 1, Eli. Having moved into a clean house to treat his autoimmune disorder, 11-year-old Eli begins to believe that the house is haunted. Unable to leave, Eli soon realizes that the house and the doctor who runs it are more sinister than they appear. Pretty simple. The boy. 16 years after stabbing a classmate to appease a legendary phantom known as the Boy, a repentant woman returns to her hometown to live with her sister and nephew. As the Boy continues to haunt her and the death count rises, she must face her deepest terror to discover the truth about the Boy before he claims her nephew. Want to hear a couple others? The Babysitter. A young boy gets more than he bargained for when he decides to stay up late and spy on his super hot babysitter. Now that's kind of a funny logline, actually, because that logline doesn't tell me this is a horror movie at all. It's only when it's introduced as a horror movie, genre-wise, and I kind of go, oh, okay. Because if it was a sex comedy, I'd be like, oh, okay. Or if it was a World War II, Holocaust movie, I'd be like, oh, okay, yeah.
Let me know when this, I want to interject, maybe some of these people would be interested in a TV series.
We are going to be talking about TV series. I should go through everything we've been talking about. We're going to start at log lines. We're going to go on to one-pagers. Then we're going to go to pitch documents, and pitch documents for film and pitch documents for television. That's what I was planning on covering. Is that good with you guys? Yeah. Okay, great. And luckily enough, I've got a chance to pitch, succeed and fail at all of the above. And failing at all of the above often enough, more often than succeeding. So these are documents, these log lines, one of the things that are important about a log line, unless the character is essential to the title of the film, don't name the character. We don't need to know Shirley did this or Tom did this. It's much better to have a young doctor, a frustrated teacher, a slick lawyer. Tell me that. So instead of like, a guy named Maverick is flying planes for the US Navy, so no, say a cocky young pilot, because that tells me a lot more than his name, right? And that's all I need for this log line. And then I have the general situation that they're in, and boom, how it expands, right? General situation they're in, and how it expands. Look at your stories. Think about your stories. Do they have that log line? Do they have that log line? If not, it might be that the story is fine, but you haven't focused in on what the story is yet. Okay? So find that log line. The next thing I do is I start to make a one-pager. Who here has heard of what a one-pager is? Heard that term? Okay, so a few of you. So a one-pager in Hollywood or in film industry is when you take your idea and you expand it to a paragraph or two. So I recently submitted a one-pager of an idea of mine. And I'll just put it up here. See, how did you do this? Like this?
Yeah, just like that.
Okay, there we go.
It's not pretty, but it works.
This is just an idea, and the idea ended up changing a lot, developing a lot, and it ended up becoming a totally different thing. It was originally called The Penthouse. And basically, this is kind of what I would say a slightly long one-pager, because it goes on to the second page. It can be two paragraphs. And all it is like, what is the basic idea of the story? What is the basic idea of the story? So I set up a character. In this case, I would use a name. I set up maybe the other major character. I set up the major situation. I go through a few beats, and I usually end it before the climax. Like, and let's go back to Top Gun, as we were talking about before. Maverick, a young, cocky pilot flying for the U.S. Navy, gets the chance of his life when he gets to compete to be the #1 pilot in Top Gun school in California. Meeting foes and new romance, Maverick has to grow outside his boundaries and face the ghosts that haunt him as a pilot. Things get even more intense when his best friend and closest companion dies in an accident possibly caused by him. Will Maverick be able to overcome everything that is set against him and join Iceman to defeat the supposed Russians that we see at the end of the movie? So something like that. It's really, really short. I mean, it's not much. And it seems like, well, what's the point of this? Why don't I just go further? When you have a one-pager, if you have a one-pager for an idea and you're like, I love it, this sums up the basic idea of a script of mine or story of mine that I think is great, you can already register that idea. You can register it with the WGA, which is the Writers Guild of America. You go to WGA.org, you do not have to be a member, and you can register just that one-pager. And when you have that, it's basically saying, I had this idea. And that can help if you're worried at all, like sharing these ideas. You have that set up. I've had one-pagers that, funny enough, go a long distance. I had an idea, and it was really simple. I had an idea about a self-help psychiatrist guy who was trying to become the next Dr. Phil, and he was going on a big book tour. This was his big break. And his sister, who is kind of crazy, and the one person he could never really help, decides to join him and forces her way on the book tour, and mayhem, goes on. And so that's about it. That's really about it. I had about half a page. And that doc went to studios, it went to like Jack Black's looking at it, all these different, I'm getting calls like, this is what's going on with it right now. And it all from that one pager. So value a one pager. And again, it's an idea, it's a way to get your idea to go like, all right, although I'm having to trim down, it's really focusing what my story is. The next, we go into, and by the way, that one pager, that can be your elevator pitch. It can be your short synopsis, right? One page. So maybe in a minute we'll go back and look at some more one-pagers. We'll go back and look at these more in depth, because I'm thinking like, sometimes those elevator pitches are the best thing to do. They really are. They're also, I say elevator pitches, but they're also those meeting pitches. So for example, where I use one-pager a lot, I don't have them with me, is I'm set up to have a general meeting, which means just hanging out with an executive or a producer, and I go in, they give me coffee or a glass of water, and I sit on their nice couch, and they act like they're interested in who I am. But then they say, like, what ideas do you have? Like, oh, I don't know, I've got this one idea. Like, what? Well, and I start rattling off the story, like, 1912, New York City. And I start to tell the story. And I say it really succinctly. I hit the major hook points. I know what they are because I've done the work and made a one-pager. So even if I've already written the script, I've made sure to make a synopsis of the one-pager so I can describe the glory of my script in a paragraph. And I share it with that person, right? So that comes into play a lot there. And then a lot of times also studios will ask, or producers will ask, like, can you send me anything on that? I'm like, yeah, I can send you a one-pager. So then we go from one-pagers. I'm going to write one page down.
I have a question on the one page
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
As far as the writing, maybe the basic format on that, would you break that down almost like you would the actual script itself, like maybe a paragraph per act?
A paragraph per act is not bad, and I think that often is the way. So you guys know basic 3-act structure, or have heard of that a little bit. So, Cody, I think it's not bad. I would say that sometimes, though, it's funny enough, because you have more information in that first chunk, that's going to be a little bit longer, and actually in the third chunk, so the first paragraph, which would be the first act, will be a little longer, and the third act is almost hinting at a lot of the action more than it is always giving a lot of the action. I was actually going to pull up that one I was just talking about that got a lot of mileage from a bunch of people. It's called My Brother's Keeper. Let's see if I just have brothers.
While you're looking that up, could I ask you a question?
Please do.
Yeah. When you say you send these things out, are you sending them out or is your agent sending them out?
Sometimes it's both. Often it's my agent, often it's me. After a conversation you have with somebody, about these different things. Like in the case of my brothers, the one I was talking about there, the Brother's Keeper, in that one it was definitely going through my agent and then going through a producer, which made all the sense in the world. But no, it sometimes is me, for sure. Okay, let's see, Brother's Keeper. I don't see it on this one right here, so let me give you the Bad Samaritan one. No, that's a little long. That's a little long too. Probably a little long. Well, I'll find that one later. But yeah, they can definitely follow the 3-act if you want, and they can even just be less than that too. They really are like, what is the main storyline in a real basic sense? Okay, now let's go on to the bigger one, the pitch doc. How long do you think a film pitch should be? You're going in, someone says, I want to hear your story, I want to hear the movie. How long do you think it should be?
3 to 5 minutes. 3 to 5.
How long?
45 minutes.
45 minutes, okay?
3 to 5.
Because he just said that. So.
3 to 5 minutes, 4 to 5 minutes, 45 minutes. You're both right. You're both right. It really depends on who you're talking to and what they're expecting. And to know that is important. It really, really is. I once was forced by a producer. We had a pitch for film, and we were working with this producer. It was his idea. He owned the property that we were pitching. And we had worked out a 20-minute pitch, because in most studio situations, most producer situations, they're looking for a 20 to 35-minute pitch. Really, that's what they're looking for, 20 to 35 minutes. He had us work, and we had a 45-minute pitch, which I felt was too long. It's just too long to hear everything that's in a movie you're going to go for your audience. And sure enough, he's like, no, I'm sure about this. And sure enough, when we got into the studio, to Paramount, we sat down with the guy, and the guy said, I got 10 minutes, go. I'm like, well, about 15. He goes, you talk for 15, you'll be talking to no one except an empty chair, go. And so we had to, on the spot, narrow down our pitch. So it is like, who you're talking to and what are they expecting? Now, once we get to people who are really honestly going to pay for your movie, like the short one, the 3 to 5 minute, is really appropriate when it's a conversation around a cocktail bar, you know, or where the best pitches are done. That's why, you know, the elevator pitches are not just because an elevator's short. It's because you're stuck together in a somewhat social situation, and you should use that face-to-face time. The best deals I've known happen in Austin, happen at the Driscoll during AFF or South by Southwest. Not during the panels, not during official meetings, but during the Driscoll after hours when people are having a drink, and then you say, well, you know, I've got this idea, and here it is. Yeah. But that would not work if you went on for 45 minutes. If you went on for 12 minutes, it wouldn't work. That would be too long. But if you go for 3 minutes, it's good. Sell your movie in 3 minutes. But if you're sitting down with someone who's like, I want to pay for this movie. I want to give you $1 million to make this movie come true. Yeah, you better be able to talk about this movie for at least 20 minutes, right? Yeah. And that's where the pitch doc comes in for film. Okay, so a pitch doc for film. I like to make an actual doc that has pictures and it's fun to look at. So here's my example of a script of mine. The Boy, the one we were just reading about on the Blood List. Remember about the woman who killed or stabbed a classmate and 16 years later? So I started coming up with an idea, and I came up with basically the nugget of it. I wasn't even ready to have a log line yet. The first thing I started working on was this. I started just sort of like thinking about the time, and then I started putting images along with it. Now, goodness gracious. With the images, like I knew I was going to be sending this first and foremost to my managers, to my agents, and they were the first people I had to pitch. I wanted them to be excited about this thing that I was working on. And so I started working out the basic format. And then the pictures are just to help. I want them to see the film. I added in more images. It ends up being, this one, just 2 pages. And when I worked on it for a little bit longer, it ended up being 6 pages. So this one ended up being 2 pages. But yeah, in the end, it ended up being a 6-page document. 6-page document that summed up my entire story, went beat by beat, definitely did the acts. In fact, more and more producers love you to say, this is how we break into Act 2. This is the midpoint of the film, and this is where we break into Act 3. So they know that you know the structure as a writer and are able to deliver that. And also, it does give them a feel. I often go into a pitch meeting also with like a poster, and on the poster I have a picture of each of the characters. I recently pitched for Friday the 13th. They're making a new Friday the 13th, part 13 actually, and I was super excited. I was like, woo, I get a chance. I didn't get it, but when I went in, I had a poster board, and on the poster board I had all these actors. The actors were, it doesn't matter who they are, you're not speaking for them, you've not hired them, but if you're able to say, Sean Connery walks into a room, like if you're able to say, picture Johnny Depp, he's a professor, and a squirrel shows up in his class, all of a sudden it gives us and your audience, it gives them like, okay, I get it, I've got something in mind, you're helping me visualize it. Here's the key whenever we're pitching, whether we're pitching 30 seconds, 3 minutes, or 45 minutes. Anytime we're pitching, we have to be the one person in the world who has seen this movie. And our job is to make everyone as excited as we are. That's your job. If you go in apologizing for the film, it's just not going to work. If you go in saying, you know, it's kind of one of those comedies, you know the kind, it's not going to work. You're the one person who has seen it. So your energy has to be, oh my God, I just saw The Matrix for the first time, right? It's got to be this, like, oh my gosh, I got to explain this movie to you. It's so cool. We start, and then you go from there. Make sense? Yes?
You wrote this, right? Why did you use the name Lily? I see that all throughout. How did you just dreamed it up?
Oh, well, weird.
It's dialing down on the screen.
Oh, okay. Honestly, I had a girlfriend who was this tall, named Lily, who we eventually married and had a baby with. Which was shocking news. So I named Lily after that.
I'm sorry.
That's the honest answer.
How old is he now?
What now?
How old is he now?
He's 7, and no longer married. I think they split up.
What about the baby?
What now? She kept the baby. It's like a little baby. You know, Lily was only this tall. Okay, so let's talk about.
Is that where Barbies come from?
That's horribly disturbing. So let's keep talking about this because I do want to also get onto the TV pitching. Let's talk about the general format of one of these pitches that you're giving. What do you think you would start with?
How long it'll go on?
Yeah, that's a great introduction. How, like, you're talking to someone, be casual. Make sure that you're making eye contact, right? You're talking to a human being. You're not recording like this is a little monologue that I could be talking to anybody, right? This is a personal story that you wrote. And they're not just buying a story, they're hiring you, right? And that's something essential. That's even more true in television. In television, your connection to the stories is essential. They want to know that you are the one person who could write the story. You are the best person to write the story. So it's okay to kind of be like, hey, here's where this story came from. I'm going to bring up another example. There's a recent pitch that I did that I really enjoyed everything working on it, and it's called The Wanting. Let me just get it up. And this is going to cover, this is my doc, okay? So this is the thing I'm going to eventually leave with them. But it also was, for me, my map for how I was pitching. I walked into the producer's office, and I've been working with one of them on the story. He had sort of seen it. We were going to seeing the story, giving me some notes, and then I was sort of meeting with the others. We go into a room, often there's a couch, and we hang out. You make them comfortable by not being uncomfortable, right? Oh, you're okay. Like, you're not going to live and die based on today. This is your chance to share a story, and you're excited about it. And it's a funny thing when writers are asked to speak publicly, because there's a reason we write. It's because we like to be alone with words and don't necessarily like to be in front of people. But we go ahead and we start talking about our story. Now, often they already know your logline, but they've had a lot of meetings going on that day. You're not the only one they're talking to. So you repeat your logline. A young couple grieving the death of a 6-year-old son moves into a penthouse apartment that mysteriously grants them all the desires, from the simplest wish to the darkest want. Okay, all right, so I've set them up a little bit. Even my logline says, this is going to go badly, right? This is going to go badly. My logline is simple. Again, it does not involve character names, but it does point out location, people, and the general issue or problem. And then I have my introduction. And my introduction, you see, was like, I've got little notes for myself. Like, this is where it came from. It was born from a conversation with a friend who believes that people are able to manifest their desires. And I started talking about self-help books. I started doing those things that get people nodding with you. And someone goes, oh, like The Secret. Yes, like The Secret, like that book. All of a sudden, hey, my pitch is a bit of a conversation. This is wonderful. It's almost like they're a part of the idea. Oh, great. We're just having a great time. Let's hang out. Is that a checkbook? Oh, yeah, just put my name. Thank you. I'll take that money. This is how it happens. And then I go through my slight introduction like that. And then in this one, this is a ghostly horror story, the tradition of the Others, The Conjuring. I think in the actual pitch, I said this is an elevated horror story. But I think that term's getting a little overused in Hollywood right now. But the idea of, like, here's what I'm going for. Again, this movie exists in your brain or on your computer. How do you tell them what it's going to feel like? What do you do? So you're like, yeah, I mentioned like The Conjuring, like The Others, like Rosemary's Baby. I think I said in the room, like, you know, that feel like, oh, okay, we get what you're going for. Then, as Cody pointed out, I started going through the acts. And for these guys, specifically, they were very much wanting to know when the act breaks were. I knew that about the company. Oops. Now, I do a little thing, and I got this from another producer, where I kind of, on my document, I go through pages 1 through 5, 5 through 25, or I usually go in chunks of 20 or chunks of 10. But in this one, I have kind of what they call a cold opening. And I just start describing it. So, have fun in this. You know, it's okay to slow down a little bit in a pitch. In fact, slowing down can be really effective. If you kind of start to allow the movie to have its moments where it's slowing down. I have my cold opening. And then I start going through the story bit by bit. I'm careful about the amount of detail I use. I don't want to bore them. I don't want to, you know, waste their time. Again, like I said, they're going to be hearing so many other pitches that day. But I also want to give them what's important ideas floating around Hollywood. Everyone was like, and wasn't that the most brilliant thing I've ever said?
Yeah. I thought it was great.
We got that, didn't we, Cody?
Yeah, no, it's all there. We're gonna get ADR tomorrow.
Okay. It's like God speaking through my throat. So as far as log lines and other ideas, there are a lot of ideas going to be floating around trying to get the same idea. Friday the 13th is one fine example. Or let's get even a simpler one. There was a company that had an idea called the Naughty List. You know what their idea for the Naughty List was? They had a title called the Naughty List. That's all they had. This happens a lot. A company or studio will go, we have a title. I had one particular animation studio, one of the big ones, come to me and my writing partners and say, we've got a great idea. We want to make this a movie. We want you guys to write it. Can you think of an idea? And they gave us the name of a continent. They gave us the name of one of the continents. I won't say because Cody's recording everything. And we had to come up with a story. So there's going to be, because of that, now a dozen of those stories. And there's going to be so many. And all these, you know, they're all baby turtles that have been hatched. And they're all trying to get to the ocean. Most of them get eaten by seagulls or die from exposure.
Occasionally, two of them end up on the screen within the same, you know.
Sometimes, yeah, right, like Volcano and Dante's Peak.
All the movies about Steve Jobs.
Right, Steve Jobs ones. Right, it happens a lot. In fact, the TV example, I'll share how my TV example ended when we get there, because it was killed by an idea almost exactly the same. Yeah?
I have a short question. Is that why you should keep your mouth zipped whenever you're working on something? Because otherwise it gets out in the air?
I don't think I have had an idea stolen. Right? I had an idea stolen in a weird way by an executive who actually heard us pitch an idea, and then 3 years later, he didn't buy it, 3 years later was pitching the same idea. And he really was. It was really weird. So that happens, but I wouldn't worry about things being stolen. The reason I don't talk about certain ideas that I'm working on is because it does get in the air, and suddenly it's not as exciting. Right? The Matrix was very, very exciting when it came out. Now, The Matrix is not as exciting. Now, the originality of the thought hasn't changed. It's just that we are now at home with it. We've heard it a lot. So, if you have an idea that's like, oh, this is great, keep that coal inside. Allow it to burn in there for a while. And then when you have your script, when you're ready to go out, boom, you shock them with it. So that's one thing. In fact, actually, that might be a good chunk just before we go into the rest of this pitch. Now let's go through this, continue going through this pitch document, but let's talk a bit about pitching versus spec, okay? Does that sound good for us? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes?
Define spec.
Okay, we'll do that right after that. Pitching versus spec. Well, let's go through this, and then I will define spec. Okay, so going through this document a little more. Oh, it's over here. What are our
Wake up the computer.
See, I got that on camera.
Oh, it's a laptop. It's not this. Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, again, in the document, you notice that I capitalize, all caps, the introduction of a character like I would do in a screenplay. And I am going through almost scene by scene, in some ways, to some degree for this document, but I'm moving pretty fast. This is a little bit of a longer pitch. This ended up being 25 minutes. I introduce the other characters. I start moving. I might break into Act 2.
Are your paragraphs essentially a sequence?
Yes, that's a great way of putting it. My paragraphs are basically a sequence. So the breaks between the paragraphs, and this is for my own my own style. Yeah, is like okay, and then a sequence is broken. You know, like, meanwhile, at a new location, a new day. That's when there's going to be a break. And basically, I go all the way through, and then there's the midpoint right there. I have, you'll notice this, just a few lines of dialogue. Just a very few lines of dialogue. The reason is because when you're pitching out loud, it's like when you tell a story, you can have like, oh, the guy runs into the house, what are you doing, honey? And she's all, I wasn't doing anything. And sometimes you can describe it like that, but it can be a bit clumsy if you start sort of saying, he says, hey, I would like a cup of coffee. And the waiter says, okay, would you like decaf or would you like caffeinated? And he says, I'd like a mixture of both. And you get it right. So sometimes it can be like overly cumbersome to have that in the document or in the actual pitch event. And then basically, at the very end, I make sure, unlike my one-pager, that I do describe in detail my climax and my crisis. That I make it feel everything that's going on. I mean, especially in a horror movie, where sometimes that final beat is going to really nail it. And this one I have an epilogue as well. An epilogue is basically, without going into 3-act structure, which I'd love to talk about another time, but we don't have time for today. So in the epilogue, it's kind of like the closing action. We've had the crisis, we've had the climax, we've ended that action, and then we have just like a little extra beat, an extra thing that happens. In a horror movie, it's usually like, everything's fine, and then 3 days later, the hand moves, or 3 days later, there's the whatever element that tells you, oh no, the horror's still going, right? And that was my pitch. And then at the end of that, once you're here, you're going to want to stay forever. It's like, and that's the movie. And then I said, and then there's conversation. Then there's questions. Really? Okay, this is pretty fun. What was this character? Do you think this character was a main role? Things like that. And we start having those conversations. The more questions they ask, the better. The more questions they ask, the better. Any questions on this as a pitch?
You went on a cold open.
Oh, I never did that. Oh, that's right. That was right. That's what. Yes. We went off, and then you told me you stole my idea.
No, I can't.
Yeah. Well, let's go through these. So let me go through the different, the cold open, Act 1, Act 2, midpoint, Act 3, and epilogue really fast. A cold open is in certain movies. It is the role where a part of a movie that is not necessary to the story that is being told, but helps set the tone or alert the audience to the action that is to come. Help set the tone and or alerts the audience to the action that is to come. You see this primarily in action movies and horror movies. The example in a horror movie is, you see Jason killing off the one survivor from the last movie. She's not going to be in the movie anymore, but it's a scary thing that happens before the title, right? Then we go on with the rest of the movie. So that the movie can start, happy day, kid going to school, everything's fine, everything that you want to kind of set up the world in which this horror is going to be. But we've already seen, oh wait, there's a monster waiting. And I got to see that monster in the first minute of the film. Now I'm going to see all these people who are not like Halloween. Remember, Halloween starts with a little boy stabbing his sister to death, right? And then we're in the movie. So now we get to watch these babysitters, and we get to watch this guy in a mask kind of doing nothing for about 30 minutes. He doesn't kill anyone for like 30, 40 minutes because we already know the horror that's to come. That's a cold opening. It also happens in thriller movies. Bond is a great example. Remember, James Bond always starts with the end of his last adventure. It has very little to do with what he's going to be dealing with in this movie. It's just the end of the last adventure, and then Roger Moore jumps off a cliff, and he's got a parachute that looks like a Union Jack, and we know we're in Bond's world. It lets us know the action that is to come, and also sets the tone. Right? You guys know first act is basically in a 100-page script. The first act is 25, right? 25, it's a quarter of the script, first act.
Is that what a script should be, about 100 pages?
Yeah, well, it's a 1 minute of script time. 1 minute of script time. Of film time is 1 page, is the basic rule. So, a 90-minute movie is going to be 90 pages. Right? I would love to, we go to 3:15, right?
Mm-hmm.
Candace?
Correct, yeah. 3:15, so you've got 15 minutes to go.
Okay. I love film structure, and I don't want to go too much into it because I think we'll miss out on talking about pitching television. But yeah, the 3 acts, 25 pages first act, which includes our inciting incident, means basically what happens around page 12 or so, where the world stops working in the way it should. And then we have kind of the move to the action of second act, which is 50 pages in a 100-page script, right? So half the movie is act 2. Half the movie is act 2. And is often the sort of, has an arc almost all its own. The midpoint is kind of a change of tone in the film, usually. And then in your third act is where you have your crisis and your climax. What people usually call the climax of the film, I often talk about a crisis too, because what I mean by that is, if someone's going to be fighting a monster externally, that's the crisis. But before they do that, they often have a moment when they have to defeat the monster within, and that's the crisis. Right? Great example, Star Wars. The climax is what? Of the initial Star Wars, the first one.
Destruction.
Yeah, he blows up the Death Star. The crisis, the internal thing, is when he turns off his computer and uses the Force. Right? Those kind of moments. So that's the third act. And then the epilogue is what happens after the third act, a short, little, 2-minute thing that tells us where the story's going from there. Good? All good on that? Not all movies have an epilogue and a cold opening, by the way. But almost all movies that are coming out of the Western, especially the Hollywood tradition, have a 3-act structure. You have examples where they don't every now and then, but most of them do. Pitching versus spec, and then we're going to go into television pitching. Does that sound good?
Mm-hmm.
Stop me in any of this, because what I'm realizing is in this room, I think we have a lot of people with a lot of different expertise and coming from a lot of different traditions. So some of you guys have been involved in feature making and written scripts, and some of you guys haven't, and some of you guys are novelists, and so that's awesome. And I wish we had a full day to talk about everything. But stop me if there's any questions. Yeah?
After you get through with the TV pitch, will you go back and talk about the 90-second pitch? Because that's what we're going to have to do this afternoon.
Yes, I sure will. Okay. Yeah, totally. Most certainly will. Any other questions? Okay. Pitching versus speccing. Who knows what I mean when I say a spec script? Okay. Can you tell us what it is?
It's essentially on speculation. You make it before anybody's going to even offer you anything for it. You're going to throw it out and ask for it.
That's exactly it. You're not getting paid to write it, is the way my wife understands it. It's like, I didn't get paid to wake up at 5 a.m. and write it. It is a script that you're not getting paid to write on speculation, is exactly what it is. So, if you have an idea for a story, like, oh, let's go back to our squirrel going to college. Oh, this is a great idea. And of course you've shared it with your 90-second pitch, and no one's listened to it, but you know it's genius. And so the question is, what are you going to do with this genius idea, right? So maybe you are meeting at conferences like this or hanging out, and you've mentioned it to a producer or two. Not, maybe not too many, but the right people. You're like, someone's like, I've been looking for something to sell on a college campus. I don't know. I got nothing. It's like, well, really? What do you think about rodents? Oh, I love rodents. If I could combine those two, I've got this idea. And then you're able to give them a pitch. And maybe they're like, well, great. Now, producers, guess what? Don't usually have money. Producers get money from other places, from studios or investors. And maybe they work with you on this pitch. And they work with you on a pitch. They're like, all right, let's get the story, and we're going to beat it out, we're going to get everything, and then we're going to go to the people who have money, the studio, or some production companies that have development money or something. And you're going to say, here's my idea, and pitch it. That's pitching. You haven't written the script. Not like, we love this idea, we're buying the idea, or we're paying you to write the idea, right? Great situation. The other idea is you've got that squirrel idea. Oh my gosh, it's so good. I'm going to tell nobody. I don't want to give it to one producer, because now I'm suddenly married to this one producer, and she might be great, or she might not be the best person for it. It might be that this script is amazing, so I'm going to write it my own. Boom, 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 boom. I write it out, now it's all my idea. Now you start giving it to people, and the story's there, and now a bunch of people are excited about it, and it can go to a bunch of different places, right? So you can kind of go either way. The wanting, the idea that you stole from me, is one I've been pitching. I've been pitching because I haven't had a chance to write it yet. So I've been pitching it as an idea, and I pitch it. And if I find someone who's going to be the right people to pay me to write it, I'll write it. But the boy, the one that made it onto the blood list, that's one I spec'd. I wrote on my own. And I was like, I'm just going to write this on my own. And it sold this last week, which was great. But speculation in even its name, it's like old mining. Like you write a lot of scripts that do not sell.
I just have a quick question about pitching.
Yeah.
Because I write and I don't get out of my dark room very often. Where is this physical space pitching happening? I mean, it's kind of a mystery to me. Where are you doing it? At conferences? Do you
Right.
show up in a producer's office?
Yes, let's talk about that. So, and then we'll talk about, I know you want to get to the 90 seconds. We'll allow ourselves, we can even skip TV if you want.
I figured you were.
I still want to, I can speak pretty fast. So, this is where these things happen. The 90 seconds pitch happens anywhere. Like I said, it can be the conversations. Sinister, a great horror movie. Maybe you guys, some of you guys saw it. Sinister happened because a guy who was primarily, he was a film critic, but he also wrote. He was working on a lot of things, and there was a director he liked, and he knew people from different. They knew each other, and he's like on Twitter. He goes, "Hey, are you in Vegas tonight?" Like, "Yeah, funny enough, I am in Vegas. Let's get a drink at 3 a.m. at a bar." They're having a drink, and this guy Cargill, who's a writer, says, "I got this idea." And he spilled the idea. The guy's like, "I love it." Called up a producer the next day. They sold it within a week. Okay? That was a pitch that happened at 3 a.m. at a bar. Doesn't always happen that way. But those are those 90-second pitches. Those ideas that like, boom, go. Most of my pitches happen in studio and producers' offices. They happen on a couch or in an office room, sometimes a nice one. That's where they happen. We're all sitting around either a conference table or a coffee table.
How are you getting there? Are you making your appointment?
No, I've got an agent. And
So there's agents just for writers?
yeah. There's I have 3 agents. I have 2 film agents at UTA and 1 television agent. But let's say, all right, so we're not in that world. You don't have to be in that world. Let's say you're in Austin. You're a production company, right? Someone's going to come to you. One of these guys is going to come to you. You're a production company, right? Someone's going to come to you and say, "Hey, guess what? I've got an idea that we can make a web series, and here's how we do it. Let me sit down with you for 30 minutes." And they're going to get you excited about it, right? They're going to come to your office or come to have lunch with you. But probably you guys need to be as aware of how to hear a pitch as well as how to give one, right? So you make an appointment. Say, "I need 30 minutes of your time. Let me tell you about my world," right? Can we talk about television really quickly, or do you want to talk about 90-second pitches?
I think everybody's want to do the 90 because that's what's going on.
All right, let's do it. That's a pity. I really like talking about television.
Could we do like a after if we want to hang out for a
Okay, I
minute?
tell you what, let's do that. We'll talk about 90-second pitches first, and then anyone who wants to hang out after for a 5-minute synopsis of what the television pitch is, we'll do that. Okay, your 90 seconds. 90 seconds are not the traditional pitches, right? This is not in the industry in the world. We have them at film conferences, and we have them in situations like this. There's seldomly in a real world that a producer's like, "You got 90 seconds, okay?" But 90 seconds is a great way to find what your story is. And I've seen them done very, very well. I've seen them done very, very poorly as a pitch judge through the years. So here's what you want to first make sure that I know. I'm sitting there. Make sure I know what your name is, make sure I know what the story is, and make sure I know what the genre is. Tell me it's a horror movie. Tell me it's a television show. Don't expect me to know that already, okay? Don't say like, "Oh, it's going to be clear that it's a love story." I need to know. Tell me that so, again, you're leading me into the story. And then you can kind of tell me who a character is. Tell me a way into the movie. It's either going to be a character, or world, or situation. A character, or world, or situation. So it's like, if I'm doing Jurassic Park, I'm not starting with the old man who opens the park. I'm talking about, imagine dinosaurs alive today in a park where anyone could visit them. That's where I'm starting, right? But if I'm starting something like, I don't know, like a sports story, I'm going to start with a sports character. I'm talking about if I'm going to do Ray Parker Jr., you're Ray Parker Jr. Ray wasn't about. Ray Charles, thank you. Like Ray Parker Jr. does not enjoy getting a biopic this year. So find out, is it going to be a character, a world, or a scenario, problem? Okay. And then once I've got that way in, I want you, like if it's a character, I want you to tell me what goes wrong. What goes wrong in that character's world? Like a happily married woman. She's great, and then everything's great in her world until something's going to break that world. It can be a great thing, or it can be a horrible thing. She wins the lottery and discovers that she is the most wealthy person in her neighborhood, or everyone in her family dies, and she's the #1 suspect of killing them. Whatever happens, boom, let me know. Then give me a little bit of sense of this world that she lives in. Now, does she like that? You know, does she live in the suburbs of America? Does she live in the border town in between Mexico and America? Does she live in the 12th century? Give me a sense of the world that we're in, and give me a sense of the relationships. Of course, you don't have time for all of them, so give me like 3 to 1 key relationships. 3 to 1 or 1 to 3 key relationships. That's all I want, right? Then give me a brief thing of where the story's going to go. And by the end, I don't need to know the last beat. I don't need to know the climax. If we were doing Jaws, as we talked about earlier, Jaws wouldn't tell me they killed the shark and everything ends up okay. Wouldn't. The Jaws pitch would be, then they head out into the ocean, but to hunt that shark, but it's unclear who's hunting who, right? It would be like that, okay? And it's short, it's simple, and it's memorized. Don't read it to me. Definitely don't read it off your iPhone. If you have to read it, that's okay a little bit, but try and have it memorized. But don't read it off your iPhone. Reason being is because I automatically, even if you're just reading to me from your iPhone, I automatically have a sense of like a trigger reaction. If someone's looking at the phone, they're not paying attention to me, and that's German pitching. Yeah.
Were you trying to talk about today's pitch, or are you talking
I'm talking about 90-second pitches overall. If you're doing a 90-second pitch.
Okay, I'm asking, you talking about today's pitch?
Yeah, I'm talking about both. If you're doing today's pitch, yes. If you're talking about doing a 90-second pitch to me 3 days from now, yes. If I'm talking about
memorize it.
I would say try to memorize it. If you don't have it memorized today, don't worry about it. Some producers don't like you to have it memorized, really, honestly. Yeah.
Okay, so when you're doing a pitch, and you get denied, whether it's for a contest like what's about to happen, or it's for actually getting it done by like a producer in a setting, 2 parts of that. Number one, do you have the ability to rework that pitch, rework that script, and bring it back to the same people, or do they just usually don't want to talk to you and wait a while for you to bring something else to the table?
Great question.
And do they give you constructive criticism?
Oh, great question, both of them. Sometimes they give you constructive criticism for sure. And if a producer's like, I like the basic idea, but I didn't like this, I didn't like this, let's work on it. That's great. That could be a working situation. That could be fantastic. If not, and they're like, no, not really interested, then no, you probably can't go back to them. They've heard already, they've got a lot of pitches to hear. If they don't like the idea of a squirrel going to college, it's not going to help. You're like, but now the squirrel has a younger squirrel brother. It's like, no, they didn't like the basic idea. They didn't like the log line. And the log line is what your story is. So no, go find someone else. Find a home for that. Yeah.
Yeah, in the registration process to come here, on this, talking about the pitch, they suggest that you talk about what films it's similar to, or what influenced you, and also the demographics, what audience will appeal. So you do need to get that into your pitch.
You know, I saw the demographics thing, and that's the difference from writer to writer, producer to producer. And someone else sort of suggested the demographic thing being on that as a suggestion. I'm a writer, and do I ever go to a room and tell a producer, you know why this idea is going to be, the kids are going to love it. The kids are going to, no, I never do that. I've never done that. I've never said, I think this is going to reach out to, because what, you know who I want to watch this movie? Everyone. Everyone. You know, if I say it's a horror movie, and I really think the horror fans are going to like it. So people who like horror movies, like, shut up, don't waste that time. So, I don't know. But there's obviously, one of the judges thinks differently than I do. So, yeah.
Earlier you were alluding to how you want to convince the producer, whomever to whom you are pitching, that you are the one person to make this film.
Yes.
And what I'm hearing from that, as applying to hearing it, memorized, is you have to have mastery of this story so much that no one can imagine anybody else doing it.
Right.
From the moment you do the log line through the 45-minute pitch, whatever that is.
Yeah, I tend to memorize mine so much, even if it's a 45-minute one. And that does, I've had producers who are like, I'm scared. I get scared that you're going to forget it. At least have papers in front of you to have something there. But it's also, it's how you own and feel the story. But it's also like, if it's a story, for example, even in Mind the Wanting. I've never lived in a penthouse apartment or anything like that. But I was like, gosh, you know, I've been thinking about this. And it's been in my mind. And this is a product of that. Or if it's a situation where, like, it is a story of, like, let's just say it's a World War II story. Like, you know, my grandfather fought World War II and was wounded at this battle. And so for me, it ends up being very personal. That's a great way into a story. It's a great way to say, I know this world. I'm going to tell you about a world that you don't know about. Like, you know, have you ever been to the sewers underneath New York City? My father worked as a sewer worker for 12 years, and the things he saw are the stories of my childhood. Here's one of them, right? Like, that can be a great way in, a great way of saying, listen to me, I've got something to tell you, and it's a story you won't forget. In fact, it's a story that might change who you are. One of those stories. It's going to be a soul freckle. Or even better, a story that if you can make it into a film, will make you so wealthy. So, you know, whatever it is, the way that you grab them and welcome them in. Welcome them in.
Cool. Real quick, we're at the end of time. I'm waiting to hear back from the powers that be that everyone else is kind of wrapping up as well. One announcement, from here we're going to go over to a premium blend studio on the square for the pitch competition and mix and mingle. That is located at 708 South Austin Avenue, and there's a doorway that's next to the Hollow restaurant. And if you go into that doorway up a staircase, a premium blend is on the second floor above that restaurant. And anyone who's participating in the pitch competition, there will be a waiver for you to sign at the studio before you do your pitch.
Okay.
So, and then I am waiting on the powers that be. It technically starts at 3:45.
Right.
It's very quick to get from here to there. So
let me say that
kind of just like.
If anyone wants to grab me and talk about television, and I will be happy. Let me do this. Let me give you my email address.
What are waivers for?
Just saying that you agree to participate in this competition.
This is my email address. I'm not going to read anything of yours. Just so you know. Because I'm a very, very slow reader. Can you read that? It's just my name, owenegerton@gmail.com. And on Twitter, at Owen Egerton. Might be even easier. Some quick last things on the 90-second pitch as we're closing up. Anyone wants television pitch information, let's talk. There's a general format that works really well. Yeah.
I think you said when you were talking about a one-pager, which I think of as a one-page synopsis.
Yes.
That it's not always necessary to reveal the ending, because I have two synopses, and one of them reveals the ending, one of them does not.
I would not reveal the ending. The best pitch I heard at AFF this year as a judge had a guy who talked about the story. Let me go ahead and give you his pitch, and I'm going to bit by bit tell you why it was good. Does that sound good to you guys?
Yeah.
Okay, are you okay with this, Candace?
Yeah.
Okay, so in the near future, he introduces, my name is blah, 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 and this is a sci-fi feature film by the name of blah. And he says, all right, in the 20 years from now, replicas have become a thing that everyone uses. Robots that look just like human beings, but of course they're not human beings, but they've been outlawed because people were hunting them down, and it became a moral outrage. Now, we meet Stan Flitterlum. Stan Flitterlum is a happily married man, but his wife drives him insane. He doesn't know what to do. She's begging to stay with him, but he just doesn't know what to do. His best friend, Bill, says, I've got a solution for you. What you need to do is sign up for Catharsis. Catharsis is a secret group that if you pay them enough money, they'll put you through therapy sessions, at the end of which you are allowed to murder a replica of the person who offended you. Once you've murdered that replica, you leave behind all your anger, and you can continue your life in the way you want it. If you love your wife, sign up for this and save your marriage. Knowing that this is his one chance to stay with his wife and overcome the bitterness that is growing in his heart, Stanley Stein signs up for this group. He goes to the therapy session, at the end of which he is let loose into a room with a white wall, and there standing in front of him is his wife. He pulls out a gun. She says, please, it's really me. He knew she would say that. They warned that the replica would say that. No, really, I'm not a replica. Again, that's exactly what they said she would say. He says, tell me anything that they wouldn't know that I didn't tell them. And she gives him more information. I've actually been sleeping, having this affair for much longer, and it's never stopped, and it was with your best friend, Bill. Now he knows she's the real thing, and together they must escape from this place. And find a way out of Catharsis, being hunted the whole time, and find out the real truth of the Catharsis. There are no replicas at all. People are being tricked into murdering their loved ones and then being held for blackmail. Can they escape? Will they get revenge on Bill? You'll have to see. Pretty good, right?
Yeah.
I got the main three characters. Of course, there's a bunch of other characters. I've got the world and the problem, where everything gets totally screwed up. And then I've got the scenario, and we can start imagining, picturing, and our brain goes boom, 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 boom. I can see where it goes, and the guy had a blast doing it. That's the most important thing, guys. Have fun. You're sharing a story. You're sharing something beautiful, and I, as a judge, I'm excited to hear it. I'm excited to hear it and steal some of your ideas. No, I'm not going to steal anything, but I'm excited, and I think you guys are going to do a great job.